Are you thinking about moving to San Diego? You're going to want to stick around and listen to these 6 things that you might not know and might deter you from moving here.
Hopefully not, but we'll let you decide. Howdy, howdy, I'm Chris Erickson. We got Mr. Cassidy Lewis. We're at the Beach Life Group right here in San Diego. If you guys are thinking about moving out here, you got some questions, as much as we love making these videos for you, we'd also love to help you with your real estate needs as you're thinking about moving out here. So numbers popping up right now, right about this little section. If you got questions, want to start that conversation, hit us up, call, text, email. We got your back when making the move here to San Diego. But let's jump into the 6 things you got to know before moving out here. One of the first things you're going to want to be aware of if you're thinking about moving to California, you probably already know, is not only the cost of living, but part of the cost of living is taxes. There are so many taxes. You got your property taxes. We'll get into a few of what they actually are. State taxes, city taxes. Some cities have their own additional tax as well. You have, what's the other one you just mentioned?
Sunshine tax?
The sunshine tax. We haven't seen it in a little bit here, but we'll get into that in the second section as well. But taxes here are quite a big number. So property taxes, especially if you're thinking about moving out here, are going to be one of the biggest things on your tax bill, because it's going to be 1% of your purchase price. So if you're buying $1 million home, the base of that is going to be $10,000 per year. So property taxes are adjusted basically when you buy your property. That's how that's kind of like the assessed value. Now there's some other little things too that you'll see on your tax bill if you are moving out here, and it's just like maybe some bonds were passed for schools, or some other little items in there like mosquito, what's it called? Mosquito,
I don't remember.
Servicing, something.
Yeah.
Anyways, it's like a $5 thing for them to come around and check mosquitoes and whatever, even though we don't have a ton of mosquitoes out here. But there's a bunch of little items. So we kind of give it ballpark like 1.25% of your purchase price. That's on the high end, is what your property taxes will be per year. So, and property taxes out here work every 6 months. So you don't pay them every month, even though when we are chatting with you, we'll kind of calculate that with you and let you know what they are, so you could budget that for every month. But really you pay them in the summertime and then towards the end of the year. So that's when they are due. And most people have those in an impound account if you do have a loan. So those are going to be just paid. Actually, they do get paid monthly, but then your lender or whoever's servicing your loan will take care of that for you. So they'll pay it when it's due.
One of the other things you might see on your property tax bill is Melrose, or CFD is how it shows up on the property tax bill. And these are bonds that developers took out to be able to build these pretty much just the newer master plan communities. We have a bunch of them here. It tends to be a 35 year bond, so you're paying that for that whole time, and then when you sell, it just goes to the next owner to pay until it's all gone. But this is just something to take into consideration. If you're thinking about a newer home, they're most likely going to have them, and it tends to be a pretty big number. Like, we are selling a home right now that the Melrose is almost $5,000
a year. Not every month.
Yeah, a year, $5,000 a year. So paid twice, like Chris has mentioned, in the summer and in the fall. So that's a big number when you're thinking about your payments.
And another big expense is your income tax. So California is pretty high, I would say, and just it is obviously based on how much you make per year, but there's something else to take into account. The sales tax is pretty high. Some cities, like I mentioned, have additional sales tax on top of the normal California sales tax. There's tax on gas. If you go pump at the gas station, if you look on there's like a little sign next to the pump, and it shows like all the additional taxes on top of what you're paying for that. So there's just a lot of taxes here. And then Cassie mentioned like the sunshine tax, that's kind of included too. There's no monetary value on that. I don't know what that actually costs, but anyways, if you can't handle taxes, this is not the spot for you.
Next up is no water. Except for the big blue thing, the Pacific Ocean on the coast here, there is not a ton of water. So what does that mean? It means it doesn't rain very often here. It doesn't snow very often in the spots that have the snowpack where we get a lot of our water from. And that leads to droughts, which then leads to control on water usage. There's times when we're in droughts where we're not only allowed to water our lawns a certain amount of days. There's times where they give credits to folks to kind of make their yards a little bit more water wise. And what droughts lead to also is dry brush, which leads to wildfires, which we do see from time to time in Southern California. So we love when there's rain, and we complain about it all the time also. So it's kind of one of those things this year, spring 2023, or summer
I think we're in summer,
Yeah,
spring. I don't know where we are.
It's
we're
hard
in,
to tell
We're
right
in
now.
June right now.
Yeah.
So.
And it has rained more this year than it rained in the previous 4 years. So like we're probably out of drought issues for a while. But it's just something that, it's kind of cyclical, and we'll have to figure it out and deal with it at some point.
Yeah, it'll definitely come back. A few ways San Diego and different cities, different areas have tried to mitigate some of the water. There's a lot of like lines going in where they're using repurposed waters for like landscaping and stuff, for like just big parks, and you'll see signs, don't drink this water because it is recycled. So you'll see that going on a lot. There is a desalination plant in Carlsbad that they're going to start providing water to different areas. I don't even know if it's going to Carlsbad. The line goes inland. So that is another way that are kind of mitigating some of this water. And one other thing about water, the drinking water, some people don't like the flavor. I drink it right from the tap.
No.
Not a chance.
Reverse osmosis for me.
Yeah, a lot of people do have the reverse osmosis or something to kind of make the flavor of the water a little better. It does, I've heard people from Northern California, you get that fresh water up there. When I lived in Tahoe for a little bit, right out of tap, it also came out cold, which was really nice. But there was definitely a different flavor in the water. Some people, like I said, just don't like the flavor of the water here. So you got your Brita, you got your reverse osmosis, you got your water filters in the garage, all that kind of stuff. So there are ways that people go around that. Another thing on water, I'm just going to keep talking about water, is a lot of the water or bodies of water besides the ocean, they're not really like usable. You can't go paddleboard on them. You can't go swimming in them. So if you're coming from other places where you're used to lakes and cruising around, some you can't have boats on. It really depends. So like we have we have a handful of smaller lakes around where you could fish, you could potentially rent a boat, but you're saying your friends.
Yeah, so there's a spot, it's actually up in Temecula, but there's a spot called Vale Lake Campgrounds, and Vale Lake, you just kind of assume that you can go out and play on the water a little bit. You can't. So you can't go in the water, you can't do paddle boards and all that stuff. There is one spot, if paddleboarding is something you enjoy doing, or any of those kind of like water sports, there is a lagoon that has a portion of it, Agua Hariendo, that you can paddleboard, that you can rent jet skis, you can do some of those things that you might do on lakes in other spots, and you can do it there.
Next thing you need to know is about the weather here in San Diego. 70 degrees, sunny all the time, right? Beautiful.
All the time.
Except for the last full day of sun we had, we're in mid-June right now, was February. I think I just heard it was February 15th. Now that's pretty rare. And it's typical during this time, definitely June, definitely May. You've heard May gray, June gloom. There's another one floating around. No sky July. I don't know. Well, hopefully it doesn't happen this year. We want the sun to come back. We're waiting for it here in San Diego. But for the most part, there are some different like little weather patterns you do have to be aware of, especially coastal to inland to deserts to mountains. We have all those different kind of areas. So even like a few mile stretch between like kind of that coastal and inland area can be completely different. So if you're living inland, you're heading to the beach, you're kind of like, oh, let's go. It's going to be beautiful. You might show up at the beach and it's going to be overcast.
60 and overcast, yeah.
A little breezy.
Drizzly, maybe.
Little drizzly.
Yep.
I mean, it happens not all the time, but a lot of times you will kind of come across that. So just something to be aware of. It is San Diego. We do have beautiful weather. It's America's finest city, but you will get a little times where it might get a little gray.
So the next thing on our list is allergies. Obviously, depending on where you're coming from, they're going to be a little bit different. When we have big seasons of rain like we have this year, everybody's kind of getting ready for all that pollen that we're going to see, and we have seen this spring. It's just something you need to keep in mind. If you've got allergies, check out the pollen counts and all the things that happen here in San Diego to make sure that you're going to feel comfortable here or have something ready to help you out.
And one time we do see some more allergies is when we get these hotter winds coming in from the east. Usually we get these coastal breezes, nice and cool, coming off the ocean. When they come in from the east, they tend to be warmer, they tend to be hotter. We call them Santa Ana winds. You get some wind warnings and stuff. So that's another, back to the weather thing to think about. But during those times too, it seems like allergies can potentially get a lot worse. I know people with allergies that we're hanging out with and sneezing and just kind of like stuffy, and it feels, your face is all messed up. Just happens a lot. I have bad allergies. I just thought I couldn't breathe at certain times, but turns out it does come down to the allergies.
And those Santa Anas just stir things up. That's the big point. It is strong winds. It's the strongest winds we get here. We don't usually get strong winds, so when we do, all the pollen off the pine trees and eucalyptus and all that stuff. You just breathing it all in. So that next on the list is creatures. We don't have a ton of crazy creatures here. The big one that you'll see, not most often, but quite a bit, is coyotes. Especially if you're living near canyons, you'll see coyotes a little bit more often. But they do get into like inland areas, suburban areas. You'll see coyotes from time to time. It's usually that dusk time or early morning time that you see them the most.
And they're usually fine. They'll run away for you. But if you do have dogs, if you do have little dogs, if you do have low fences, I mean, they could hop pretty high fences too. So it's just something to be aware of. If you're living in a lot of those areas, usually you can check on next door, and that's like the coyote warning system here. So you'll be able to see where they are if there's any issues around your neighborhood. But yeah, for people, you'll be fine. But definitely for pets, beware of that.
We have some of the normal ones that everybody has everywhere. You've got rats, you've got lizards, we have snakes. Rattlesnakes are something that we have to keep in mind. For the most part, snakes here are harmless. We do have rattlesnakes, so those are the ones that you want to watch for. You'll see on trails a lot.
I was going to say real quick on trails. I think I just saw this tail going in. I was running on a trail over in Encinitas the other day and coming around a corner. It's just kind of like this 2 foot wide trail, and I saw a little tail going into the bushes. It scared me because there's a bunch of lizards running around, but it didn't look like a lizard tail. So I think there was a snake on there too. It wasn't a rattlesnake, so it was fine. It was just like a normal snake tail. If there's a normal snake tail.
Yeah. So you will see that like on trails. They'll kind of warn you to watch out for rattlesnakes. So it's just be loud is kind of the key. They aren't aggressive unless provoked. So it's not something we really worry about. Kind of a little bit more with like pets. Like if you live in a canyon, if you've got dogs, maybe throw some chicken wire at the bottom of a fence or something to try to keep them out, because dogs are curious, and we do see that, them get bit from time to time. The other thing that you don't have everywhere in the US or the world, if you're watching from somewhere else, is termites. So termites are a very normal thing here in Southern California. We have people that are shocked when a house has termites in it. We're not, because most houses do. So just something to keep in mind. If you are buying here, we will have a termite inspection. Wood destroying pest inspection is what we call it. And there will be termites in the majority of houses. It's easy to get rid of them. The wood damage is the expensive part of termites. So it's just one other thing that you have to think about out here. We see a lot of people get like an annual service for termites just to make sure that they're not eating your house.
The next thing in San Diego is that we don't have, it says no new construction, but not much new construction. There's little pockets here and there where you do see some projects going up. There's some where you do have a little more land out in Valley Center with a little bit bigger of a project. But for the most part, most of the homes here are a little bit older. And by older, we were talking right before we came on. And Cassidy said if you're coming from the East Coast to here, 60s is like a newish home, right?
Yeah.
So
definitely newer than some of them.
That's like, once you get to like downtown San Diego and that kind of area, you have some little bit older homes than that. And then as you spread out and start getting in the suburbs, you see some 50s, 60s, and then kind of some of the beach towns, 60s, 70s, and then spreading out from there. And we do have like some of the newer, like San Diego Hills is a newer master plan community in this North County area of San Diego. And that was like the 2000s. So that was like one of the bigger projects that we've seen up in North County in a long time. And then you'll see a bunch of little areas, that I'm sure if you're looking at homes right now, you probably look at new construction. There are a few little spots that you will find some new construction, but as a whole, there's not a ton of it. So like comparing to like some of the Texas communities or Boise's or just different areas like Florida and stuff where you do have a lot more new construction, you have these vast areas of land where you could just keep going out and building on. Most of this is built out. So the suburbs are built out. Like you do have the cities are obviously built out. So it's like dense suburbia, it is spread out. You don't have like these big, huge, like even downtown San Diego is pretty small. And then it just goes out and you get, a lot of houses, but for the most part, they're not brand new.
And just to piggyback on that too is, like Chris said, there's not space to just kind of keep spreading out. So when you do see space, when you see greenery and land, it's usually designated open space. So California is trying to keep as much of that kind of raw land in place or intact. So you're not seeing those things to get developed too.
And so if you are thinking about moving to San Diego and those 6 things did not scare you away, be sure to reach out, call, text, or email. You can pause it right now. Number right here is popping up. We got your back when making the move here to San Diego.